Thanks, Anam, for your insightful speech. Now, I'd like to invite our brilliant panel for this topic, which consists of Anaga Rajesh, Amal Ashraf, Siddharth Gupta, and Nika Pur Mohammed.
Hi, I'm Amal Ashraf. I'm a senior at GEMS Modern Academy, and I was the leader, organizer, and speaker at the KHDA Wellbeing Conference 2019 and 2021. Alongside that, I was a panelist for positive education and well-being at the Middle East Youth Expo, Abu Dhabi 2020. And I'm the director of Entrepreneurica, marketing mainly, which is a youth organization internationally that focuses on entrepreneurship. And I'm really excited to be here.
Hello, my name is Anagha Rajesh. I'm an undergraduate student at BITS Pilani. I'm the founder and CEO of Bind Champs, which is a youth-led organization that focuses on making mental health more inclusive and accessible. I'm excited to be here.
Hello everyone, I am Nika Pur Mohammed. I am in year 10 at GES Dubai, and I am also very excited to be here and share this experience with you all.
Hi, I'm Sid. I'm a junior at ASD, and I'm really excited to be here.
Hello everyone. As mentioned previously, my name is Anam Fatima. I'm a finance major at the American University of Sharjah, majoring in Bachelor's of Science and Business Administration, also doing a double minors in Data Science and Economics. Amongst a few of my achievements, I am a TEDx speaker and the Director of Communications at the Miracle Foundation. We will now be proceeding with dwelling deeper into the topic of mental health and exploring the prospects of what can be done.
So I think one of the most important points that Anam brought up is that so many people are afraid to speak about their mental health. This is because of the stigma surrounding the conversation starting mental health. I think one of the ways to control, alt, delete, and start the conversation about mental health is to address the stigmas surrounding it.
Thank you so much for bringing that up, Siddharth. I think when you think about the stigma surrounding mental health, you automatically think about the sort of stereotype around it. Well, there is a part of that, which I'm sure one of the panelists will elaborate on later on. It's more of not the people who are struggling, but the people around them. Not you, but some of us tend to label the people struggling with their mental health as toxic or attention seekers and don't take their problems seriously. And I think that is that mindset that we have to change. That is where the fresh start is required. And that's why people who struggle often struggle with opening up and talking about their mental health, because they think that someone else might be struggling more than them, which is something a lot of psychologists, a lot of therapists have to say when you look it up. And could you imagine how bizarre that is if someone simply considered mental health problems to be as physical health, and if you thought that, oh, I have a sprain, but a fracture is way worse, and so I will not be talking about my injury, I will not be seeking help from a doctor. That is how we should be considering mental health, because it's just as important. And I think the problem with that is that it cannot be diagnosed, because you do not see these expressions out in the open. It's something you suffer with inside, and that's why it's very important to talk about them. And I think Nika has more to say on that.
Yes, Amal, I completely agree with you. And during this pandemic, it is very important to keep these in mind. And a way that I think that we should as humans can destigmatize is creating safe spaces for people to open up about their mental health and be comfortable in letting other people help them or letting other people know how to help them. And so for me, I don't know about you guys, but for me, a safe space can be with your family, some people you trust, some people who can give you guidance, or maybe it's a room that makes you feel calm, or a book where you can read it. And I think that especially during this pandemic, that having safe spaces is really essential to keep yourself centered and ask for help, definitely. And do you have anything to say about it, Sid?
Probably that the safe spaces about mental health should be in communities rather than government-based. If it's community-based, it'll make it feel more real, and it'll open up the conversation within communities, which can open it up to the whole country and the world.
To add to what my fellow panelists mentioned about exploring and finding safe spaces, I do want to make it extremely clear here, I'm sure we would agree on this, that even though we're mentioning examples of safe spaces, finding safe spaces are always very subjective. They depend on your relation with your peers, your family members. So it can be any of the examples we are mentioning here, it can be anyone that you find to be your safe space.
So adding on to that, something that's very connected to safe spaces is who exactly has access to safe spaces. So there are people from relatively privileged backgrounds who can access therapists, who can access community-based recovery programs. But there are a lot of individuals coming from relatively underprivileged backgrounds who find it very hard to access mental health support, including safe spaces. Now, another aspect is when an individual is often suffering from a mental health condition, the first tendency is to go online and look out for resources. Now, a big challenge with this is most of the resources that are available are very, very centered on Western countries and mostly relating to maybe white men. So even most of the research studies that have been conducted by health authorities or by psychological associations are relating to these groups. So when it comes to individuals from, say, South Asian countries or from Middle East, or even individuals coming from different gender backgrounds, such as the LGBTQI community, it's very hard for them to find the sort of resources that can help them out. And that's why I would like to say that democratization of mental health resources is very, very important. And this is something that my organization, MindChamps, is currently working on. So we are working on creating content that are relative to people in South Asia, people in Middle East, relating to mental health. And we're also training young people to create inclusive and meaningful content about mental health. And I think this is very, very important because when you talk about mental health, it should not be restricted to the privileged sections of society or to certain people from certain backgrounds. It should be accessible and available to everyone.
So talking more about inclusivity, like one of the most important things is gender inclusivity. So for example, for men, there's a stigma that every man is manly and like they can't talk about their feelings. But if they do talk about their feelings, they're seen as unmanly. So I think one of the most important things to open up the conversation about mental health is to make it more gender inclusive. So I think Nika has something to say about female.
Yes, definitely, Sid. And to add on to that, not just men, but also women and females, they also might feel pressurized. As Sid said, some men might feel that the society might not provide ways for them or accept them if they show their feelings. Women also, because in females in society, it is most famously known as women are not really recommended to answer back to men or fight back or argue or do anything of the sort. And this also relates to this gender inequality.
But I think that no matter who you are, mental health is such an important part of your personality because it affects your self-esteem, it affects your confidence. And not seeking for help is one of the worst things that you could do that affects it. And no matter who you are, you feel clueless, you feel lost, and you feel confused because you don't know what to do, you don't know who to reach out to, right? And you usually don't reach out, as I said earlier, because you think there can be a worse issue, or you think that you'll be judged and you'll feel guilty for reaching out, and that's how low your self-esteem drops to. And that's why, as people, as humans, the core of humanity is compassion. And that's what we have to represent in times such as these. In the pandemic, while we've been lonely or isolated, whichever you might be feeling, I think the most important thing is to realize that you're human and you have to be compassionate. If you aren't struggling, there is someone around you who is. And if they aren't being able to reach out, it's your duty as a human to empower them to do so. And that's the fresh start that we all need.
And I think talking about compassion from a very different perspective compared to what Amal has been talking about, there are also a lot of people who are caregivers for individuals suffering from mental health conditions, and they themselves start feeling depressed or feeling anxious because they feel they're not able to assist their loved ones as much as they want to. So if you are someone who's supporting an individual with mental health conditions, it is possible that you experience compassion fatigue. And this compassion fatigue is not because you don't love the person you are caring for or you are unempathetic. It's because there are certain limits to you as a person as well. So compassion fatigue is real, because when you are trying to care for a person and you feel that, you start suffering from mental health conditions yourself, it is important to take a break. It is important to open up about that as well. So it is important to be compassionate of people around you who are suffering from mental health conditions, but at the same time, it's also important to take care of your mental health as an individual and as a caregiver.
While Anaga talks about, self-empowerment, I think one of the most important things you should do when you're taking care of your own mental health is to educate yourself. Because no matter how petty you think your issues might be, you need to understand that before you get into a worse place that you reach out. And how to do that is to educate yourself. If you want to even help the ones around you, you need to educate yourself. Because in our heads, in our minds, it's so standardized that if you're depressed, you are going to be staying up till 4 or 5 in the morning, you're going to be listening to sad songs, you're going to be watching sad movies, you're going to be crying all the time. But that's not what depression looks like for everyone. And it's the same for other mental health issues, such as anxiety. And it's certain aspects of our lives that add on to those problems, which is why you can't have that one stereotypical thought about mental health. You have to know that it's different for everyone, that it keeps evolving, and people have different ways of expressing them. So as I said before, compassion is the key to understanding those problems. And before you help anyone else or help yourself, you should educate yourself about it.
So what have we spoken about today? I'll quickly summarize and go through the key points that we've addressed today. One, we spoke about the stigma around mental health and how it can be addressed through creating safe spaces. And we also focused on how safe spaces are concepts that are subjective and differ from one person to another. Secondly, we spoke about democratizing access to mental health and how we can make mental health more accessible to individuals regardless of their identities. We then spoke about how it is important to be compassionate of people around us and how compassion fatigue is a thing and that needs to be addressed. And we also spoke about how we need to educate ourselves and others about mental health so that we can overcome all of this stigma and all of this, all of the difficulties surrounding addressing mental health issues. So it was a great panel today.
At the base of this stack, tackling mental health issues requires a change in mindset, and at the very least, the ability to adapt to flexibility. We will leave you with that thought. Thank you very much for listening to us, and have a wonderful evening ahead. Thank you once again.